So glad to be back on Mastering Counseling again today. I am really excited to have Dawn-Petrice-Youngs, who is an LPC-S, and she is a seasoned therapist of over 2 decades who started her career in special education. So thank you for being on the show today, Dawn.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Let's go ahead and I told her before that I work in a school and I work very closely with our special ed team and have so much admiration for them. And that's where you started. So why don't you talk to us about your journey beginning there and then how it evolved into running a practice?
Not a problem. So I started, I think I was about 23. And well, I should back that up and say when I was in college, I originally went into a healthcare field, thought I wanted to be a nurse, OT, PT, something like that. That's always been in my blood. But my dad didn't agree with that. He had different generation, different thoughts, feelings on it. And he said I needed to get a business degree, and that's what he was paying for. And so that's what I did. So that's kind of starts my foundation in what I do now. But I did as my dad asked, but I also snuck in a second degree. I have a health degree as well. So went out, did hospital administration, hated it. I found myself teaching more at the hospital rather than managing. And so I said, well, screw it. I'm going back to school and I'm going to get my teaching certification, even though my dad didn't want me to do that. And fell in love with the special education population, particularly learning disabilities, ADHD, emotional disabilities. Those were just my kids. I loved it. I understood it. I too am ADHD. And so I became a special education teacher, did that for 3 years, and knew that I always wanted to go into counseling, having done that, because I spent the vast majority of my teaching counseling before I could teach them. All of the stuff going on at home and processing that, them not getting enough sleep, not getting good nutrition. So in the state of Texas, to be a school counselor at that time, I believe it has changed since. At the time, you had to be a classroom teacher for at least 3 years before you could be an assistant principal, or a counselor. So that's what I started working on. And then I went back and got my master's, had my family at the same time, staying home with them, getting my master's, and then found my way back into the school system, taught for a year and a half, and then rolled into being a school counselor. I did that for 8 years. Then realized that at least in my district at the time, they had put on so many administrative duties, scheduling, paperwork, IEPs, all of this type of stuff that I didn't get to meet with the kids. So when they would come to my door and I'd have to say, I'm sorry, can you come back in an hour? I have a meeting, and they're crying. That wasn't acceptable to me. So I said, fine, I will get my LPC and I will leave and I'll do my own thing. And so that's what I did.
I love that. Yeah, we have lots in common for sure. And yeah, that's so interesting. Your dad's set on the business degree and then you taking it a step further and just I love that you would do something, you would try it, you liked it, but then you always wanted more and you kept pushing yourself into the next degree. So very cool. And so now you are the owner of Youngs Counseling in Texas. And so why don't you tell us about your practice and how if it's a team, if it's just you, and kind of the main things that you focus on or who you're able to help.
So we've been in practice since 2016, so almost 8 years. I started off as a solo provider, it's just me. and I worked primarily with high schoolers. I was a high school counselor, so those kids are my jam. Primarily high school, young adults. Got to the point where I was seeing, I hate to admit this sometimes, I was seeing 38 to 42 clients in a week, really in 4 days. So if you look at an hour a piece, that's just cramming a 40-hour work week in 4 days. I did that for like 3 years. And finally was like, I've got to teach other people to do what I'm doing. Like, I'm not the end all be all. I'm not. But that's what parents thought. And that's what my former colleagues thought. They were very excited when I went out into private practice. And they would say, you have to see DP. You have to see DP. And being a counselor, yeah. So being a counselor, we're typically, old school blue personalities. We're caretakers. We want to help, nurturing, and we oftentimes do that to the detriment of ourselves and our families. I think I did a pretty good job of balancing it with my kids. I have three grown children now. They're 22, 21, and 19. During this time period was right around COVID. So that part was good because they were home or they had reduced schedules. And so it didn't really bother, but it absolutely exhausted me. And so I made the commitment. There's a theme here. I made the commitment I needed to grow. I needed to bring in some baby counselors, and that's not in ageism, that is in endearing terminology. Young counselors that needed to grow. So I became a supervisor and started bringing on interns and associates and started to grow my practice. So now, as of today, we have 4. There's 4 of us total, which seems to be a really good number. Ask me in a couple of years, I may think something differently. That's the theme here. Every 5 years, I get the itch. I feel like, okay, I've got this. I've got a groove. I'm efficient. And, I've learned everything I can learn. Now we got to move the bar. We got to learn something different. That's actually how I got into the neurofeedback component of my practice. So we are a group practice now. We have 2 interns and associate. One of my interns graduates in May and will be staying on as an associate. So it's exciting. We see ages 4 and up. 2 is as old as we need. My grandmother is 101 and she likes therapy. So there is no cap. Main areas of typical diagnoses: anxiety, depression, life transitions, ADHD, behavior concerns in kids. I am not a big diagnosis and label person. I think it pigeonholes people and they think they need to be a certain way based on what the DSM says or what, Pinterest or Google or whatever social media platform out there says that diagnosis is supposed to be like. So I work in symptoms and I take a holistic approach. I'm also a certified integrative medical provider, which means I'm looking at your nutrition, I'm looking at your sleep, I'm looking at your movement. We will talk about the vitamins that you're taking. I like my clients to have blood work up before they come in. Let's make sure our vitamin D is good, our Bs are good, our iron is good, our thyroid is good, because all of those things affect our mental health. And if that's something easy we can fix, we don't have to, spin our wheels for 6 years in therapy and you get upset because you're not making progress.
Yeah, I love that. So many things. Just going back to the 5-year itch, I just couldn't so relate. I feel like just some people are always, oh, you're efficient and things are running, and why wouldn't we do something else or change it up? So that's so cool that you have 4 people on the team and that one's staying, and I'm sure the others are branching out and taking what they learned. So that's amazing. Um, so let's kind of unpack a lot of your approaches. I definitely want to talk about the medical angle. Let's talk about that first. Tell us the term again. You are a medical, like, are you a doctor, or you used a
No, no,
term?
no,
Okay,
no, no. It's just a certification in
gotcha.
which you go in and you are learning about the nutritional component in your diet. It adds in some body movements and postures that have been around for a very, very long time. I mean, you think yoga, meditation, mindfulness. It's taking all of those components and integrating them into your life. I mean, we know if you are outside for 20, 30 minutes, I believe it's 4 to 5 times a week, you reduce your cortisol level by 27%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why wouldn't we do that? You don't see a lot of angry gardeners. I'm just putting it out there. Have a gardening passion. They're really not that angry. They're pretty chill, and that's because they're outside. It's a grounding component. It's sharing energy with the earth. Not to get too woo woo. There's actually a lot of science behind it. But yeah, these are some lifestyle changes that you can make and feel better. Why wouldn't we do that?
Right. Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that you want people considering their health before they even come to you. And then so I assume you are often signing disclosures possibly with their medical practitioners. So you guys discuss that angle.
Yeah, the release of information. I'm all about coordinating care. I want all your providers to be on the same page and helping you from all your different knowledge bases.
All right, very cool. Let's talk a little bit about the neuroscience-informed approach, which I'm sure is definitely part of that. But talk about how you trained or had specific classes in that, and then how you brought it in with your clients.
So that started really because we're learning so much more about the brain and how it contributes to anxiety. And that seems to be the bulk of clients is they have this anxiety component, more so than depression, truly. And I think that goes into the American lifestyle, and we're constantly go, 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 and there is no rest, right? So that's where it started, trying to help clients with that, with some cognitive behavioral therapies, some dialectical behavioral therapies, that type of thing. But explaining to clients what's happening when they become anxious, that flight, fright, freeze. We've now, stimulated the amygdala, what the amygdala is doing, and being able to explain it to people that way. Then I ended up taking it further because, I got my itch. And at the time I got my itch for more knowledge, my own son was struggling. I mentioned earlier, I'm ADHD. I happen to marry someone who's ADHD, and we happen to have 3 ADHD children. So our house is kind of spinning all the time. My oldest had taken medication for his ADHD starting at 5 years old. Knowing what I know now, I would have gone back and done that differently. But at the time, that's what we felt like was the best route. We did it. It worked for him until he was about 13, and he decided he didn't like taking medication. He no longer wanted to take medication anymore. And then it just became this struggle battle. So for the next 5, 6 years, he kind of spiraled all over the place and began to self-medicate with cocaine and marijuana and alcohol. And if you know anything about the brain and ADHD, he's trying to, compensate for what his brain is lacking. stimulating himself in certain areas, depressing himself in other areas, right? And there was, like I said, no way I was going to get him to take medication. I really didn't. It's not my first choice at all. The neurofeedback I could require him to do because he was living in my house. So I went to training for that. It is, I want to say it's 38 hours of coursework and in-person training on how to do it. Neurofeedback is where we are using operant conditioning to essentially make new neuronal pathways, neuroplasticity. You've heard that term all over the place. That's what we're using. We're using the plasticity of the brain to make new pathways to reduce those symptoms. The research has shown us there are certain patterns. We have 5 brain waves. I know this gets kind of techie.
No, it's great. It's great.
We have 5 different brain waves in our brain. And what we find is we have too much of one, not enough or of another, or the ratios between those 5 are off. And when that's happening, that's where these mental health symptoms come from: brain fog, inattentiveness, hyperactivity, anxiety, depression. So if we can just teach the brain to work more efficiently, then these symptoms dissipate.
Wow.
That's great. Then, so what I'm seeing in my practice is these clients that I've had for 6 years, and they would admittedly say, nope, I'm a lifer. This is just me. This is what I need to do. I've learned it. I've accepted it. They're realizing that we start doing the neurofeedback. They're like, well, maybe I'm not.
Wow.
Maybe I'm not, right? People who say, I've always been anxious. I've always struggled with depression. That's not normal. That's not normal. Let's look under the hood. Let's look at the brain and let's figure out what could be going on underneath that could be causing or contributing to these symptoms. We all have life events. We all, we don't always respond well to those life events: loss of a loved one, job, abusive relationship, whatever. But we shouldn't have an overarching theme of anxiety or depression or ADHD symptoms in our life. Let's figure it out. Some of that's behavioral, what we've learned, how we've learned to respond to things, but that's still that underlying piece that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. That was such an amazing and wonderful explanation. I think that pairing it with your own personal family is huge. So thank you for being open about that. And then, of course, you wanted to explore it, and now you see the success within your practice. And I don't think we've talked too much on here about people, not staying. I mean, we talk about not staying where you're at, obviously, but like, I really feel the push from you that this does not have to be a lifetime thing. So thank you for bringing that out. And that was so interesting. Let's talk a little bit on the business side of things, in that you became an LPC and now you run your practice and I think still see clients. But how was that transition for you? And what are some maybe tips or advice you would give to those who are starting out in that realm?
In that realm, I would say first and foremost, you need to find others that are in the field that match your ethics. You need to share the same values and beliefs in regards to your counseling skills and practice. Pick their brain, pay their consultation fee, meet with them, get their feel on it. Allow them to help you and point you in the right directions in regarding legal paperwork. You need to find an attorney who understands setting up businesses, making sure that you're setting up your business appropriately. In the state of Texas, if you are licensed by the state, you must have a professional LLC. You can't just have an LLC. I've had a colleague who didn't know any better and went on LegalZoom and just set up her LLC. Well, It's not legal in the state of Texas.
Wow.
You have to have a professional LLC. These are little nuances that if you're not in the field and you don't ask the right people, you're going to screw it up. And then you're going to find yourself later on. It probably is not going to happen for years, maybe even decades, but something's going to happen. It's going to slip you up and you're going to lose all the stuff that, all the time and effort that you've put into it. That's a huge one. So find some people that are already doing it in your state who understand, who are doing it the right way. Connect with an attorney who knows what they're doing. Connect with a CPA and accountant to make sure you get that portion set up appropriately. Your attorney needs to go over all of your intake paperwork. There's just all these little pieces that I have helped several colleagues open up their own practice. And I have learned over the years that I used to say, hey, ladies, gentlemen, you can do this. You have a master's. You can open up your own private practice. You can run your own business. You don't need to work for somebody else. Having done it as long as I have, I don't say that anymore because I've had highly intelligent people who have crashed and burned and ended up owing tens of thousands of dollars because they didn't do it right. And so I just keep my mouth shut. If you want my help with consultation and where to go, I am more than happy to do that, but I don't try to convince them to move over to my side and go in private practice anymore.
Right. No, those are invaluable tips for sure. I hesitate to even call them tips. It's like a lifestyle thing. And I really liked what you said about lining up ethically with people who support you. Because there's just so many facets to this world and you're dealing with people's toughest, deepest things. And I can see where you could end up in trouble. So that was a really good warning for us. What would you say as we look to the future in this field, and we know you're always looking for growth and change, what would you say are some of the changes you're seeing? I don't know how familiar you are with college programs and, the different types of degrees you can get, but what are the trends that you're seeing in the next few years, do you think?
Unfortunately, I do work with a lot of interns, and I've had interns from at least 3 to 4 different universities located kind of all over the place. I am seeing some progressiveness there, which is exciting, but I don't think enough. I'm really shocked that my interns are coming in and they've never heard of neurofeedback. We've got 80 years worth of research and 40 years. The last 40 years they've been publishing a lot because a lot of it was practical, not theory, right? So they're doing it because it's working for people and they're not researching and documenting, so it's not published. But I think that my younger interns, my 20-ish, late 20 interns, are definitely more open to that and more open to taking a holistic approach. And I think that is the area that we need to be focusing on, seeing the people as a whole person, not a diagnosis. It's shocking to me that psychiatry seems to be the only subspecialty that doesn't look at the organ that they're actually treating on a whole. They're not taught to look at the brain, figure out what's going on there before you start carpet bombing it with drugs. And they'll say, I'm going to give this to you. We'll check back in 4 to 6 weeks. When you've had clients who've actually had adverse reactions to those, had auditory hallucinations, increased thoughts of suicide, that kind of stuff, I don't think that is in the best interest of our clients. I think we need to do a little more work and look at things holistically. Like I said, I've had clients come in and, we've been working for a year. They've done great. They're making progress. They still feel a little something. And I'm like, when did you go to your doctor last? Bring some blood work up in. And their thyroid is completely low. We start working on that, and they're a totally different person.
Yeah.
But it wasn't caught because when they went to the primary got the lab numbers back from the major lab corporations, and they're the ones who create the ranges, what is normal and what is not. So the doctors are just looking at that paper going, well, everything's normal, so you're fine. But they're not actually looking. There's 4 different numbers to the thyroid. The ratios can be off. They can all be normal, but they can still look abnormal when you look at them together.
Mm-hmm.
There are some doctors out there that are absolutely doing the work and going, this is the problem.
Right.
Why did it take 18 months to find the right doctor to recognize the situation? And it was because the counselor said, hey, something's not right here.
Yeah.
That's not my area.
Right.
But teaching our clients to advocate for themselves. Right. I'm not giving medical advice. That's not my area, right? It's not my wheelhouse. But teaching clients to go, if you feel like something is not right, let's explore it. Let's just keep exploring it. So I see that being more of the trend, more holistic approach. And I think some of that is a backlash of COVID and being home and beginning to question, what am I putting into my body? What's going on? I mean, there was such stuff with pharma and everything. I think people are just starting to pay attention more, at least the clients that I'm seeing. They're starting to question and ask, and I really don't want to do medication. And so how do I do this? And I think that's good. I think it's putting your personal power and control back in your hands, right? If you want to take that medication, that's fine, but you do the research, you figure out if that's the best route.
Yeah. Wow, this is amazing to me. I've actually been ill the last few weeks, and just over the last few years, I've come to appreciate the word of a doctor that is practicing. I think, like growing up, we think doctors know all and always have the answer. And the older you get, or you have family experience, and literally they're practicing. And I think you're right. COVID brought out so much of that, especially long COVID. And I had a family member who struggled for months, and it was literally a practice. And I love how you're connecting that with mental health. And so, yeah, so many great things that honestly were very personal to me too in the last few years. So thank you. And I'm glad a lot of people are seeing that in their programs and with the interns, but it's almost like I have to think there's so many things to learn that you can't put it in one master's program, right? And that's why people
100%.
are building all the time.
Right. Well, I literally last week started my PhD.
Oh, congrats.
That itch, right? There's that itch again.
Yeah.
Thank you. And it's applied, it's a PhD in applied psychophysiology. So it's where all of this kind of comes together. Your mental health and your physical functioning comes together, and how we can bring out the most in both of them. Neurofeedback and biofeedback, that's a subspecialty of the psychophysiology. But yeah, I mean, just my personal belief, I believe the vast majority of us, not all of us, right? Bell curve here are outliers. We're not talking about that. But the vast majority of us, I believe, can heal a lot that's going on with us if we will just pay attention to how we're treating our body, right? Food is medicine. What you put in your mouth is going to determine a lot of what you get out of your body. So, if you're eating a lot of processed foods, if you're eating foods high in sugar, which most American foods are very high in sugar, you start to push down your immune system. You start to mess up your blood sugar. If you're stressed too much, now you're knocking down your adrenals. Well, your adrenals are your stress hormone. Now you're kicking off too much cortisol. So you're throwing your whole body out of homeostasis. And when you do that,
who knows?
Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, yeah. So we just need to take back control and pay attention to what we're doing.
Yes, I agree. Well, thank you. That was enlightening in so many ways and gave us so many great facts, information, and some business tips as well. So thank you so much for coming on here and giving us your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, feel to explore Young's Counseling website if you're interested in the field or if you do need that type of support in Texas. To our listeners, we're so thankful that you are tuning in. Leave us questions, comments about what you'd like to hear more about. We'd love to hear the feedback on Instagram and Facebook. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you so much.